Welcome back to the Theatres of Dreams podcast brought to you by Radio Alti and Altrincham Community Media. My name is Tom Jolley, and as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Rod Maxwell. How are you, Rod?
I'm all right, despite the football as usual, Tom. But yes, I'm all right. Another week, another dollar.
I mean, we didn't do a podcast last week, and we missed a really big one. Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. The last game at Goodison, well, not the last game, but the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. James Tarkowski, last minute equaliser, absolute limbs. And then in the last few days, I think it was on Monday, Tuesday, we saw the first ever game at the new stadium in which Everton played Wigan it was one of the youth team games. And the funniest thing about that, I thought, was a Liverpool fan who plays for Wigan scored the first goal at Everton's new stadium and held up six fingers to signal to the Everton 10,000 fans of the crowd that they had six Champions Leagues.
I saw that. I saw that. I mean, first of all, the go back to the derby. What a game!
Yeah.
What a game! And that's what football is all about. And a lovely way for the Evertonians to sign off at their infamous stadium.
Well, with the derby, yeah, I think,
For the derby.
yeah.
I mean, but also we've seen the seen photographs now of the new place. And I gotta say, it looks the business, doesn't it?
Thing I'm most impressed about is the food available. Away fans will be absolutely buzzing looking at the menu and the pints on draft there and things like that. I think overall the stadium's going to be a big improvement. Looking at where the site where it's been built on Brownlee Moor Dock of what that used to look like compared to what it looks now, it looks superb. I tell you what, if you were to look at just the picture of the stadium when it's empty, you couldn't tell me that's Everton or Schalke. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
They've copied the same model of having the steep stands and things like that. I think they've gone as close to the rule as they can with being as steep as possible to kind of get the fans on top of the pitch and create that atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, it'll be very different. United fans will see us in probably 3 or 4 years' time if we eventually build a new stadium or what's going on with that. But from an Everton fan's perspective, to be in that stadium for the first thing, I think I've seen a lot of videos going around on social media about Everton fans' first experience. It's like they are genuinely like butterflies delighted getting to the stadium. I think it just shows that as much as maybe there's been a lot of worries of whether they're going to stay in the Premier League with the stadium, I think now David Moyes has got them back on track. The results look a hell of a lot better over the last few weeks. They're in quite good stead at the moment.
Yeah, and actually, these things are never easy. Leaving something that's historic and meaningful and memorable and all of that, but they needed to move on. They've got a fantastic, brand new and very state of the art stadium. You,
Yeah.
you you see them in Germany a lot, don't you? And you see them in Europe, and we've got now a few here, and there's a lot about it. It looks fantastic. I mean, and I'm sure it'll be, the sightlines inside will be great. And you talked about food and all of that type of thing. It's a modern day offer, really. At the end of the day,
Yeah, I mean that's what you're looking at, isn't it? Going over a couple of the other Premier League results, Brighton getting their second win against Chelsea at home in just a week in the Premier League after beating them in the FA Cup. 3-0. I've got to talk. I don't know if you've seen it, Rod Matoma's first goal. His ball's coming over the top over his left shoulder. He literally touched it down, one touch inside, placing the bottom corner. One of the best goals we'll see all season. And then Everton, we just spoke about them getting a last gasp winner away at Crystal Palace. Brentford just about getting past West Ham away from home after a couple of disallowed goals in that as well. I think Johan Visser was quite unlucky not to have two of his own. Bournemouth obviously being Southampton. I mean, Southampton have a 99% chance of being relegated this season. So unless they somehow defy the odds and win a ridiculous amount of the games they've got left against very tough opposition, I think Saints fans already know their fate, and you can tell that by the attendances at St Mary's. One that I think surprised quite a lot of people: Manchester City 4, Newcastle nil.
really surprised me.
Don't get me wrong. I didn't expect. I expected a Man City win. Being at home, it's one of those games, isn't it? You kind of expect City to get through. I was surprised it was a 3 o'clock kickoff. We know how Sky and BT and things like that, or TNT is it now? Try and mix up the fixture times a little bit to maybe get people watching it a bit more on the telly. But I think City have finally cracked the way to play with sort of. I know Marmoush isn't quite the number nine as he always played in a two at Frankfurt, but he's playing just to the left of Haaland. And we've seen Haaland in the last few weeks, since Marmoush has come in, drop quite deep, and it allows that run over the top. And obviously, Marmoush getting a hat trick within, what was it, the first half an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Brilliant result for City, and it kind of pips them back on track. I mean, in the league, shall we say, obviously still a goal down on the Champions League, which we'll get into after we've gone through the Premier League results, but a good result for City there. This was the one that surprised me, Rod. Fulham 2, Forest 1.
Gonna say,
This
I've got that
one.
open in front of me.
This was the one where I thought there was a lot of talk on social media about this one. The Snapchat derby is obviously a couple of the players on each team have quite a big social presence on those apps, but from a fun perspective, I saw someone say something. They're quite like a luxury team. They seem to they're not really bothered about the the mid-table teams. They're just bothered about beating the ones towards the top. And when you look at Fulham's performance, I mean, don't get me wrong, they tactically they outclassed Forest. I thought Sells had a good game to keep Fulham out. I think Adama Traore on the right hand side has got to be one of the most confusing footballers we've ever seen in the Premier League. He's built like a brick, yet he's rapid like a Ferrari. I mean, that doesn't correspond at all. And then you look at the sort of Wolves connection he has with Raul Jimenez up front and the strength they've got on the bench as well to bring on Fulham. Marco Silva is he's doing a really good job there, and I think obviously everyone knows that. But the best quote I saw this week was someone said if Marco Silva goes into Sainsbury's and you've got four types of beans in front of him, he buys the most expensive ones just because they're the most expensive. And I think that probably sums up maybe in a bit of an anecdote how Fulham maybe go about playing the bigger teams because against the bigger teams, this probably sounds like I'm waffling, but for me, Fulham against the bigger teams, they get it done. Whereas when they're playing your Brentfords at home, when they're playing your
Gotcha.
Wolves, they kind of plateau a little bit as if it's not there. But they'll be pushing for Europe this season, won't they? But again, they are one of those teams we've seen over the last few years where as soon as they know they're safe in and around that 10th, 12th spot, they take their foot off the gas,
Yeah.
maybe try and go for it in maybe the league or the FA Cup, and that just kind of plateaus out.
But
Aston Villa won Ipswich one as well. I think Axel Tuanzebe's red card really harsh. He got the ball for the first yellow card he received in that one. Villa, Rashford looked electric when he came on, absolutely ran the game. Ipswich down to 10 men, got a goal through Liam Delap, and then again kind of plateaued out in the last sort of 15 minutes towards either side, and then a really good at point for Ipswich, who were just on the edge of getting above with Leicester out of that relegation. So I think as the weeks go by, Ipswich and Leicester are half like sort of pulling Wolves back in with them after Wolves, with the initial manager bounce they thought they had, got away from them. They're kind of getting dragged into it. Arsenal 2, Leicester City nil. Mikel Moreno playing up front after coming off the bench is something I did not expect to see. And Arsenal playing without a recognised centre forward. They played Trossard in there for the first half an hour. Rod, do you think Arsenal? I mean, I think everyone knows it's kind of the missing piece of the jigsaw, isn't it, for Arsenal? Is that striker?
mm.
But can they really push Liverpool to the end of the season at the top with playing, non-centre forwards in that sort of number nine position like they did with Moreno, who got two goals on Saturday?
Well, they are playing, if you like, a very modern style without that centre forward. I don't think that really is going to make any difference now. It's all about Liverpool at the end of the day. I think Arsenal can keep going, and I think that was a big result for them against Leicester away on Saturday. But I don't think anybody's catching Liverpool now. It's not really about Arsenal either. It's all about Liverpool. But going back to one of the games that you mentioned, the City for Newcastle nil, that really, because of City's inconsistent form recently, and because Newcastle seem to be going very well, it wasn't the fact that City won the game; it's the fact that they threw down a 4-0 lead and held that. And Marmoush's a first half hat trick as well. I mean that's something going really. So that game really surprised me. And I was surprised that Nottingham Forest didn't manage to get something from Fulham. Because they have been going well, and they'll be disappointed, I would have thought, with that result on the road. But as you say, Fulham one of those sides where it's almost a case of they need to now decide what is their ambition.
Yeah,
Is it just the EPL survival?
prestige, I guess, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's as a London club, there's a lot of London clubs. Where are they going to go next, basically? But fantastic result for them. The other games, you say that the Villa Ipswich game, Tuanzebe was sent off in that, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think for the first challenge, it was. I understand why the referee's given a yellow card for it, but there was a few I've seen. I think Kieran kind of alluded to it in his post-match press conference about saying Amari Hutchinson's had that foul done on him 20 times this season, and a yellow card's never been given. I understand Villa were on the transition at the time, and Morgan were just going through the midfield and with some really nice footwork. But Swansea got a foot to the ball. The referee was in a perfect position to see it. And I think it's unfortunate for him to be sent off, but Ipswich did really well to hang on to it, especially with Palmer in goal. They signed him from the Championship after letting go of Muric, who hasn't been good this season at the start of the season at all. I think he made 9 or 10 saves in the game. Brilliant performance. And there was a save with one of the last kicks of the game where he's kind of just flung an arm at it and just got there with his left arm, put it past the right post. Probably one of the most unorthodox saves, but the most surprising best saves you'll see this season from him. And that was a good performance. But that pretty much kept Ipswich in it.
Well, just looking at the match stats, 75% to 25% possession in favour of Villa. And the XG was 2 to 0.36, 25 shots to 4 in Villa's favour, but actually only 6 shots on target. Now, let's just talk about, of course, Marcus Rashford made his debut for Villa. I think he came on as a second half sub.
Yeah, he came on at half time. I think it's his maybe second appearance for Villa because he played in the
Of
FA
course.
Cup, I believe, because he didn't play against Arsenal for Manchester United, so he's allowed to play in that competition for Villa. He absolutely ran the show. Him and Asensio on either side coming off the bench have been superb for Villa over the last few games. And looking at Rashford, you think there seems to be a little spark there. That we all know it's there. We all knew this was going to happen when he went to Villa. We all know he'd be ripping up defenders. It was written, but for him to take control of a game like that against Ipswich, where they play a low block against down to 10 men, it's not something that we've seen in his game quite a lot. He's been able to be part of a team that can break down the low block. And I think it was really interesting his battle on the left wing with some of the Ipswich defenders as well. He was just breezing past them and he absolutely ran the show. Probably could have had a goal himself, hit bar for a free kick, which is what Villa ended up scoring from through Watkins. So, we as for everyone involved in Manchester United, we always expected this, and we'll get onto some of the other loan signings that Manchester United have that are succeeding at the moment, funnily enough. But from that one, surprising. I wanted to talk quickly about the Sunday games. Obviously, we'll get onto Manchester United Spurs in a moment. Liverpool just about, and I say just about, 2-0 up at half time, had a penalty not given. Konate should have been sent off, by the way. Brilliant goal from Cunha in the second half. And then for Liverpool, they just got it. They just got over the line. This is the first time ever they've not in the Premier League. They've not had a shot on target in the second half
No,
ever.
right, yes.
And you look at that Wolves team and they had the chances. I think there was a chance that came in the last sort of 5 minutes or so. It came to one of the youngsters in the box. And you thought, just get on the end of it. And I think it was Quansah got a really good tackle in that last man. And you think, yeah, Wolves aren't going to get something today. But there was a period, sort of 50 to 70 minutes, where you thought Wolves will get something here. They'll get something. But Liverpool do what winners do, and they just get it done. And these are the results they're going to need come the end of the season if they're going to be wanting to lift that trophy.
This is the cliche that I was going to come to, which is, at this stage of the season, it is about results. And this is one of those games where, despite the fact that they weren't at their best, they were just slightly nudged in possession, and a lot of the stats said it was in the balance. Liverpool still saw it home, and you would turn around in another way and say this is the form of champions because
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a game they're going to look back on and go, "Oh, that's the game that won us the league," because there's been a couple of the results, big ones that they'll get past. I mean, Manchester City at the weekend, they've got them, haven't they? So that'll be a big one in terms of their title games because that's the one they've kind of fallen short on over the last few years. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not going neck and neck with Manchester City this season, but that'll be a big one. But from this one, it wasn't the glamour tie that it was one of those. You looked at it beforehand, 2 o'clock on a Sunday, Liverpool at Anfield against a Wolves team who are 17th and stable. They'll win that by 3 or 4. They went 2 up, and then you think, oh, they'll make a few subs and just see this one out. And Wolves clawed their way back in. But as you said, the form of champions, they just got over the line. And then Spurs won, Manchester United nil. The scoreline doesn't reflect one of the worst games of football we will see, but one of the most entertaining, to be honest. I think when you've got the two most mediocre top six, I mean, you can't even call them top six sides anymore. The two most mediocre teams in the Premier League facing off against each other. It's always going to be an entertaining one. It was quite end to end at times. From a Spurs point of view, it was always going to be James Maddison who unlocked the United defence, especially after Roy Keane's comments in the midweek saying he's not the game changer everyone thinks he is. But you know, I think he's got a couple more games to maybe prove him wrong. From a Spurs point of view, they could have had one more. I think two. I think for me, I'm obviously biased as a Manchester United fan. They had the chances to score more, but you can tell where the frailties are in this Spurs side. But it was Jed Spence on the left hand side that was always the open pass, and it was always the way they were going to sort of go down the left hand side. I mean, if you look at the heat map, it was always down that side for Spurs. From a United point of view, I understand the setup by Amrim. Very weird week. Was really hit with injuries. Ahmad and Mainu look to be out for the rest of the season now.
Really big.
Agate and Collier picked up knocks. Eriksen's out ill. Yoro's not in the squad. The bench was full of every academy player under the sun that plays for the club, bar Victor Lindelof. I think someone said. I think if you look at the amount of appearances that have been made on the bench, it was 282 professional appearances. 281 of them were Victor Lindelof. One of them was the new lad that United signed from Arsenal, Heaven, who played probably about 3 minutes in a cup clash for Arsenal a few years back. But from United point of view, I think we said it just before we started recording, didn't we, Rod? Xerxes on that 10 played really well on the ball. Off the ball with him in the squad, you're probably playing with 10. That's probably how it works. You can see he wanted Bruno to come over and cover, and I think Dorgu, I was really impressed with on the left hand side. I thought he was really
Yeah.
comfortable on the ball. His runs in behind. There was a moment in the first half where United got a shot off within 5 seconds of getting the ball from Manana to Hoyland down the channel. That's how you play with Rasmus Hoyland up front. You have to play down the channel. And we had one or two chances in the early exchanges in the sort of around the 20-minute mark where United could have got one back. Then there was a really nice phase of play down the left-hand side where the ball was moved from side to side. Bruno picked it up. Xerxes and Hoyland dragged three defenders with them into the box. Garnacho's free, and you think just put it on target. And I think he put it over and hit the Emirates with that shot, to be honest, because it went way over the bar. But I think the result probably flatters Spurs just a little bit because as much as United weren't the best team overall, they had the chances to kill the game off in that first half with one or two.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, it was two really bad sides, right?
Yeah.
And that's that, they are where they are, and you can see why they were. There was a lack of confidence from Tottenham, even in their own stadium. And, United were there for the taking because we looked nervous. And in the middle of that four in midfield, we there was just nothing. There was no legs. Casemiro offers you very little cover, very little protection. He just doesn't have the legs to cover the ground, and I looked at the starting lineup, and you just thought, well, okay, there's a bit of energy in there, but I looked at the Bruno and Casemiro together, and it's like, come on, guys, I just do not see. There's no engine room in there, and
And from what I've seen from United's academy this season, I'd have loved to have seen Jack Morehouse been given a chance in that midfield too. He played, speaking from an Altrincham point of view, played against Altrincham in the National League Cup and absolutely ran the show. Did the exact same against Oldham. I know these are obviously five divisions between the teams, but from that perspective, it literally says on an imprint on the shirt, youth, courage, success. If you've got a bench like that, I don't get me wrong, I understand why Amram's not thrown them in at the deep end because against Spurs, if you probably put three or four on, you're probably going to get turned over on the transition by Spurs because of the quality of players they've got with them not being such an injury hit squad they've been over the last few months. But bringing Chido Obi Martin on for what was it, 3 minutes left to go when you're thinking from 70 minutes on, you kind of just got to throw the kitchen sink at it. And he didn't quite do that. I understand why he thought of went, right, we're having a couple chances here. We play it safe, keep the 11 on the pitch we've got. But to make one substitution in what was it, the 88th minute, bringing Chido Obi Martin on, didn't have a touch of the ball when
no,
he came on. And then you look at the other players on that bench of what they could have offered. Obviously, there's a storyline and a headline there with Darren Fletcher, his two sons both being on the bench and things like that. But from a fan's perspective, you want to see them being given a chance. And from probably the 60th minute onwards, I was thinking, get Cheeto on instead of Hoyland. He's raw. Give him a chance. He'll want to impress. Get Morehouse on. I think he was the big one in midfield I wanted to see. And looking at a couple of others, I was thinking, I think James Scanlon was in the squad until the very last minute. Harry Amas, I don't know why he hasn't been given a chance with the struggles we've had at left back. So, you know, there's so many questions in and around it there. What's going to happen with these youth players and how they're going to be integrated? Because Amram's not really done that since he's come in. He's not given those. those academy players as much of a chance as the likes of. I mean, we know what Hamilton are, but he gave the youth a chance when it was when the opportunity was presented. And I'm a little bit disappointed that some of those lads that travelled with the squad didn't get the chance and ended up going back and then playing on Monday against in the at Lee against Fulham in the Youth Premier League.
Uh, it uh, Yeah, it's weird, and I think any even very faintly qualified football person would have looked at the starting lineup and would have said, "Come on, Bruno and Casemiro together. What's going on there?" And I just do not understand the thinking. I mean, you could have played, for example, you could have played, for goodness sake, Lindelof in there alongside Bruno and just had him as a low lying sort of sweeping defender.
You look at it and go, well, he played for midfield. He played midfield when he played in the Portuguese league before Manchester United signed him. I think you look at some of the other players in that squad. I mean, Masraoui was played in midfield quite a bit by Ten Hag. Dalot's done it on the inverted way. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing. I'd much rather have Casemiro than Dalot in midfield. I'll tell you that. But I understand. I understand. He had no choice, did he? I understand the team selection with the players he had available. It's it's going to be a really tough ride. I mean, looking at me and a couple of friends over the last few days have been looking at Manchester United's fixtures towards the end of the campaign. All of them that have been announced bar the Europa League knockout phases. There's probably three games I pick out and go United are going to win those. It's Fulham at home in the cup because it's the cup and we need to win. I think you'll probably scrape over the line with that. Leicester away and then Ipswich at home. They're the three I think United pick up points in. There'll probably be some stupid result in there, like that somehow it'll be quite a United thing to go and lose to Ipswich but win against City at home or something like that. It just would be. But those are the three fixtures I pick out and go, yeah, that they're going to be the results that United get. And I think in any other season, that puts us in real trouble. But this season, there's three teams in there that are worse than us, and I think we'll scrape it by, and Ineos will regroup come next season. Amrim, the fact that people are losing faith in him already, I think is quite
Uh,
frankly ridiculous. Just if you think that, just you don't know
what
football. Um,
and I've been thinking about this hugely since Sunday, and I've been reading all different reports and everything else, and I've come to the conclusion that well, first of all, I think there's two very different narratives going on here. There is the professional pundit versus like former football player who have got an anti-United campaign going on, even if they played for United, by the way. And,
I want to bring something up on that in a moment.
and some of them are not particularly objective. And then you've got what I would call the more um, professional amateur, the fans forums, etc. And actually, I go to them now all the time for a different perspective, right? Because I think
Yeah, it's not even a different; it's an honest perspective. You look at
it,
Gary Neville on Co-Coms, the Telegraph put out an article this week saying he should no longer be on commentary for Manchester United games.
it shouldn't.
The thing that annoys me is before the game, we saw Gary Neville hammering into the Tottenham board about how they've managed the club over the last few years alongside Jamie Redknapp. And Gary Neville was very heavy hitting on Daniel Levy. Then it comes to after the Spurs game, you look at Manchester United and go, he's never going to go at the Manchester United owners because it's not the Glazers anymore, even though they are there. Jim Ratcliffe's now the face of it, and he's on Jim Ratcliffe's payroll with the regeneration project. So you're never going to get Gary Neville now
Yeah.
going at the board. It's not going to happen, and I think that's what I'm losing faith with the professional side of punditry now because
Yes.
they're not honest enough with what's going on at clubs because a lot of them have pre-existing relationships, and I think don't
I
get me wrong, that's how they get the positions they're in. But I think Jamie Redknapp had a bit of honest, fresh air in there with what the Spurs board's like. Don't get me wrong, we saw that from Neville when the Glazers were the big name at the top of the club. Now it's Ratcliffe's the face of it, and he's involved. He's very reluctant to say anything, and I'm not trying to say that this is Neville's only source of income because it's by far from it.
well,
I
no.
think it's quite scary that there's so many things that are going on off the pitch with so many different. I think there's a lot of owners across the country. I mean, look at what's happened at Blackburn recently with John Eustace leaving. Now I mean, I know it's different level of club, but there's still problems all down, up and down the footballing pyramid. You look at Manchester United now and go, You just want pundits to be honest about off the pitch as well as on the pitch. It seems to just be, oh, it's the culture. Oh, there's stuff. They just go, oh, there's stuff off the pitch. They never give us some analysis or an opinion on it. They leave that to the fans that speculate. But because it's the fans that say that, they're deemed as not honest, not truthful, fake news, and they're reaching a fine line of just. It seems to be just
So, so,
let's do catchphrase and say what's in front of us and say what we see,
I'm finding now, Tom.
rather than giving a whole story.
If I want an analysis of the game and I want to see a video, I'll go to a Stretford Paddock. I'll go to one of those types of forums now. Okay, so that's one thing because there's definitely an agenda within the professional media at the moment, and I'm actually disappointed with some of the former United greats and the way that they're coming out at the moment because. My feeling about United at the moment is that Amrin came in at a time in the season and he would have known that he was inheriting a bag of crap, right? And he's a very intelligent guy, and I personally believe that he got himself protected in his contract and in the dealings by saying this season's going to be a bit of a write-off, right? Okay, because he didn't have a preseason with them, he didn't have any transfer window, and he knows that inside that club there are a number of people who are overpaid, overaged, not fit enough to do their job anymore. So I believe that that and also we haven't had a style of football that's been consistent for a long time. So he's sticking with this 3-4-2-1 type formation, but that's because he's trying to find out who can play in it and who can't, and he's exposing that.
I
And
think you look at there was a big thing of what Sporting fans said when Amorim first arrived, and they said there was four main points, and it was it's going to take a hell of a lot of time,
yeah,
and then they said it's never going to change. He's never going to change formation. He makes people the system. The big money sign, the big money names, they're going to go. The big names in the dressing room that disrupt the relationships between coach and manager is gone, which we saw with Slimani at Sporting a few years ago, and some of the other big names that they had. And then it's the activity in the transfer window. You're not going to be going for the big names anymore. You're going to be for the young players who are lesser known, don't cost as much, but have potential. And what happened with Sporting? They've got Gyökeres, Quenda, Goncalves in that team I mean, when Gyökeres was playing at Swansea and Brighton not too long ago. And now he's £100 million superstar who plays up front for Sporting. You look at Amrin's recruitment so far, Yoro, 19, Dorgu, 20. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I say Yoro, he was part of Ten Hag's plans, but from the players he's got available, there's probably four or five you look at and go, they're going to be the mainstays in that squad. I think we have this conversation all the time with every 6 months, it seems, when there's a new link with a new manager. But you look at Amrim's system now, we know he's not going to change, but fans need to stop complaining, saying, "Oh, Ten Hag didn't change his tactics enough," and now Amrim's here. It's he's not changing. Make your mind up. Which one do you want?
so
Amrim, we know we were warned, but not that. Well, I say warned as if it's a bad thing. We knew from his time at Sporting the project that was going to happen. We knew it was going to take time, and he's not been here that long. What is he? 20 games into his tenure. It's
exactly.
going to take time. People need to realise that, and if it means we finish 15th this season and it means that we have no European football next season. So be it, because it means that we have extra time to train, extra time to get the tactics right, extra time for recruitment, and then you get the players, the big players out, the deadwood out, and you can rebuild from there. It's so hard for a manager to rebuild halfway through a campaign
Totally.
with a squad that's nowhere near what he wants.
Totally, and I am 100% behind him. 100% behind him because he has to get them into a formation and a style. And once that's settled, that's not to say that he won't change it occasionally, but
Yeah.
he's trying to bed in his way of thinking. And I think actually, all the sports science behind Ineos would support that.
And
And
you can see it as well. That's the thing that a lot of these keyboard fans they're just saying it for the sake of saying it. They're not looking at the game and when you against Spurs, you can see the patterns of play we're trying to implement. It's
yes,
just that with the players available, it's just not possible. And
exactly.
when he gets the chance to get the players in that he wants and gets actually backed by a board that care, I think it will become apparent that it'll be a success. I think people just need to know that it's a rut that we're going to have to stay in for a little bit. I mean, you mentioned before, didn't you, about how Arsenal were 15th under Arteta during lockdown, and look where they are now. I mean,
exactly.
it's
So,
going to take time, isn't it?
so I personally believe this is part of the pain. This pain's been coming for a long time,
Yeah,
you know,
it's about time.
and it's made worse by the fact that we are an asset rich club that is cash poor. We're a £7 billion club based on Jim's investment, but actually because of the way that the club's been managed on a revenue basis and our cost management, we have no cash to buy players. In fact, unless Jim had put money in, we were probably over our overdraft, if you like, and that again is because I personally believe that the Glazers have been focused on the asset value. They haven't been looking at the detail of running the club. I mean, they will have cared less about that, and they wouldn't have wanted to make the redundancies that unfortunately may have been needed to be made because that would have added to the pressure on them and the negativity around them. But now they've got somebody in as their hatchet man. He is doing something that probably needed to be done some time ago. And of course, it's easy for them now to back away and let him get on with it. They still have to sign off on all of that.
And something that people might not know is if you look at Ineos's other sporting projects, there's been rumours over the last week or so that he's pulling out of them to go full focus with Manchester United. There's been links about him selling his third stake in Mercedes, and Mercedes want to buy it off him. He's been taken to court. He's supposedly been taken to court by one of the rowing athletes when he supports some of the Olympic teams, and some of those sort of institutions that he's got sort of all his eggs in different baskets. But I think this is his big thing now, isn't it? I mean, don't get me wrong, he's still got a couple of other. I mean, Nisa in there, aren't they, with Ineos, and there's a couple others, but this is always going to be the mainstay. This was always, as soon as he came in, this is going to be the one that he was going to care about the most. And as much as it may not look like that, I think it's because fans maybe aren't used to the ruthlessness of it.
But there were a few things about the game that did baffle me, and I looked at it and I've written down here we didn't do the basics well. Our passing was poor, absolutely awful. I couldn't see a pattern of play, couldn't see any hold up play, panicking at the back. I thought the basics of what we were trying to do
Well,
was.
I think when you look at hold up play, I think Xerxes on the ball did that really well. You look at the passing, I think there was moments, and I think overall you look at the game from face value and go, yeah, it was a really poor game. There's glimpses in there from both teams from a Spurs aspect. I thought on the ball they were really good at moving it, and James Maddison was integral to be part of that, alongside Jed Spence, who I
Yeah,
think was awarded man of the match in there as well.
yeah.
From Manchester United point of view, I think you could see the patterns of play, especially the runs that Dorgu and Garnacho were making on the left hand side that were being consistently ignored because Casemiro wanted to play it safe. Um, I think from face value, I understand that, but I think there's a few points in there that maybe I'd go. But if you look a little bit deeper, you can maybe see the highlights of what Amrim's trying to implement. I think it's just tricky on face value in such a mediocre team to see the benefits.
And I guess he put a little bit of criticism on himself by making the change so late in the game. You sort of think, what were you trying to do there? And but he obviously doesn't feel like the environment is suitable for some of these players to come in. So I look it. I think you look at the game overall, you turn around and say, my goodness, that they're two of the best EPL teams, and it's such a poor game, and they're not doing particularly well at the moment. But and probably the fact that Maddison scored the goal, he's that sort of cheeky Leicester City
Yeah.
for gets under your skin at times type player. But my view on this is that we are a longer term project. I
Yeah.
think the manager has got a philosophy. We have got an approach, if you like, which we've missed for years. It is painful. Don't get me wrong. It's embarrassing, but this isn't just about this season. This has been coming for a lot of seasons, and there will be seeds. I can see some seeds. I'm still worried about Anana at the back. Somebody was saying to me the other day, actually, Kasper Schmeichel. If you could get Casper down from Celtic, would he not be a better player at the moment than Onana?
Mm, I don't know. I can't say I agree with that one. I think it's just you look at the players we've got, and it's probably one of the positions you're probably there's other positions you're more worried about, I think. I think in that one. Don't get me wrong, he should have parried the goal clear. You look at a couple of the things that he does, but he's going to be a mainstay for now, isn't he? I don't think United are going to be thrown in the towel on him. But moving away from Manchester United, going from one team in Manchester who's not doing too well and is in turmoil to one who's on the up, our beloved Robins, Alti. Two wins from three, all away from home. Two all draw at Oldham. A late win against Gateshead, with Kean, or 1-0 against Gateshead, should say, against Kean Taylor getting the goal on his birthday. Nevertheless, the Preston North End low knee, and then looking at last night against away at Hartlepool with Alex Newby left out of the squad and Regan Linney back in, you were thinking, ooh, a couple of changes in there. We've been hit with some injuries. Baines, Olsen came off early, and you thought, this is going to be a tricky one tonight. You probably settle for a draw. And then a ball over the top from Elliot Osborne. Regan Linney rounds the keeper, makes it 1-0. Carell Redding then goes up again moments later to Lucas Weaver for his first goal in the National League to make it 2. Hartlepool get one back, but then Alty head back to Manchester from the northeast with all 3 points. Currently sat in a playoff spot, which will be a home tie if we were to stay there as well. Filed at home at the weekend to carry on the home form and still continuing the unbeaten start in 2025. So brilliant from an Altrincham perspective. We've
Really good.
got still got a tricky run of fixtures to come up, nevertheless. So from Rochdale away twice, one in the league, one in the trophy, and then looking at some of the other league games in and around there, it's going to be hard. We know that. But from an Alty perspective, really good. Some of the other results that probably helped us out is Oldham losing at home to Maidenhead, and then not the one that affects Alty too much now. But looking at the top of the table, Barnet getting a win over York, that was a really big one because both teams are projected to get over 100 points come at the end of the National League season. So from an Alty perspective, still in the playoffs, really tough run of fixtures, and we've come out the other side quite well.
And just 4 points behind Oldham with a game in hand, and Oldham in fourth place in the table, 56. Alty in sixth place with 52. I mean, they're doing really well, aren't they? And so it would go to a playoff basically, would it?
Yeah, yeah. So the first top place automatically goes through, and then I think it's seventh and sixth, and then fourth and fifth play each other, and then second and third get a bye to the semi-finals of the playoffs, and that's kind of how it works. Obviously, last season it was really different because of the whole situation around Gateshead leasing the stadium and doing that means they can't go up, and the whole thing that happened there. Obviously, that's been cleared now and back to normal routine, but. I think next season we're going to see a big change. The three up, three down from the National League is going to be coming in. Hopefully, I think Bill Watson at Altrincham, the manager, Phil Parkinson, Sam, the CEO, they all back it. A lot of other National League teams back it. I think it's a long-awaited thing that finally is going to come into play from next season, hopefully.
Let's turn to European football. Last night, Celtic heroic 1-1 in Munich and lost 3-2 in aggregate, but they really did themselves proud, didn't they?
Absolute heartbreak. It was Kasper Schmeichel actually saved the first chance in the last minute, and then Alphonso Davies just snuck in and kind of bundled it over the line with the last kick of the game. And absolute heartbreak for Celtic. I'm sure Rangers fans were loving the fact that Bayern Munich scored in the last moment, but I'm not too sure about Bayern Munich. Rod. I'm a bit confused by them. Company's got them playing a style of football that maybe is a little bit too naive still for when he was at Burnley to Bayern Munich. Obviously, it's a big jump anyway. Don't get me wrong; they're still stat top of the Bundesliga, but that's normality for Bayern Munich, isn't it? I mean, I know last season Bayer Leverkusen did the invincible season in the league over them, but from a Bayern Munich perspective, that's where they expect to be, and that's where they should be with the quality of players they've got in that squad. Are they going to go far in this European competition? No. I'd be very shocked if they get past the next round, to be honest. But from a Celtic point of view, obviously disappointing to go out. Some of the other results, Feyenoord got through against, I think it was AC Milan in there as
Just
well.
just seen that. That's an unbelievable result, isn't it?
Yeah, really good result for them. It kicked off towards the end of the pitch, end of the game on the pitch at the San Siro, but final getting over the line. Then AC Milan, from obviously that point, they've not done two. Their home record has been really good, so I expected them to get a result, but it is what it is with them. I guess you could say. And then looking at some of the other results, Atalanta going out to Club Brugge, was it in the end? Ademola Lookman missed the penalty, with the Atalanta manager now branding Ademola Lookman as the worst penalty taker he's ever seen. I'm sure when he was in the Premier League with Fulham, we remember his Panenka penalty in the last minute away at West Ham where they
Yes.
could have won, and he missed. Obviously now at Atalanta, just come off the back of winning African Footballer of the Year. And obviously Atalanta now bowing out of the Champions League with that one. Some of the other results still yet to come in. Obviously, Manchester City play Real Madrid 3-2 up on aggregate are Real Madrid, and that's going to be a home side at the Santiago Bernabeu tonight. So that'll be a really interesting one. And from a Manchester City point of view, this is where they've got. This is what they've got to be going for this season, is it? They've got to go all guns blazing in the Champions League now.
I mean, that game was it last week that
Yes.
I mean, it was it was Ancelotti at his classical best, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
And Jude Bellingham getting the last goal, it was never going to be anyone else, is it, in the last minute to get one. But you know, City have done it at the Bernabeu before. They've absolutely trampled over. Well, I say trampled. They've done it before there in one game. There was a 3-3 draw there that was probably one of the best games in the Champions League we'll ever see. I think that was last season. And then now you're looking at that squad after a 4-0 win against Newcastle. Real Madrid actually lost. Sorry, they had a really contentious decision against them with a Bellingham red card at the weekend that's being appealed. There was actually the referee that gave that got death threats from Real Madrid fans after the game
Really?
because of Bellingham's sending off because of what Real Madrid described as a miscommunication between English and Spanish. But from a Real Madrid perspective, they've got Rudiger back. That's really big for their defense because they've had to sort of mismatch people in there with the likes of Vallejo and Vasquez in defense, and Carvajal's still out. You've got Eder Militao is obviously still out with his second ACL injury in 2 years. David Alaba's not quite fit to come back in yet. Their midfield is probably the strongest part of their team alongside that attack bit. I from my point of view, I think Real Madrid might just get over the line, but expect it to be maybe a hectic game where both teams score a few.
It was a great first leg, and I gotta say, I was liking how Real Madrid were playing actually, and I've always thought that they and Liverpool play something similar.
They've gone. Real Madrid's style up and Ancelotti's quite. I think it's going back to what they played under the Galacticos and that Real Madrid identity. I mean, they've got a Galactico team in the midfield and the front line. Obviously, Bellingham, Modric. You've got obviously Cruz isn't there anymore, but Mbappe, Vinny, and Rodrigo was a front three. You're not going to get much better than that in European football, really. So from their point of view, really good, but still going to be a tricky test for them to get through. And I think out of these two that go through in this game, I probably see them alongside Liverpool as probably the favourites to maybe go and win it.
And let's just look forward. Obviously, Thursday night is UEFA Europa League, the knockoff rounds or the knockout rounds, I should say. Not
The
obviously
knockoff
knockoff.
rounds.
They are knockoff, but no UK sides involved in that. Thankfully, Manchester United managed to get through without that. Then Friday night in the Premier League, Rude plays against Brentford at 8 o'clock. Do you think he'll keep Leicester up?
No, I don't think you will. I think they'll be close. I think that they will just probably go down. I think you're looking at sort of towards the end of the season. They still have quite a few games to play of those teams in and around them. But I think the likes of your Evertons, your Wolves probably pick them to just stay up, I think.
And your Premier League ties of the weekend, big game for United at Everton as well. Their last game at Everton, that's the lunchtime kickoff. That's a toughie, isn't it? Given that Everton will feel
It screams of United missing a penalty and Everton winning 1-0, to be honest.
it does, doesn't it? Other picks of there's London Derby, Arsenal versus West Ham United. West Ham are slightly more resurgent, but Arsenal are looking pretty strong. Ipswich Town versus Tottenham Hotspur. That's quite a nice tie at 3 o'clock on Saturday.
And Ipswich are at home as well, aren't they? And I
Yeah.
think you look at Tottenham's run of fixtures, I think they've got City in the next couple of weeks as well. Nothing screams Tottenham like losing away at Ipswich and then winning against City, does it?
And tea time game on Saturday is Villa versus Chelsea. You know what? It feels like it would be a draw.
Well, I think we need to look towards tonight actually because Villa versus Liverpool's tonight in a because of Liverpool making the I think it was the Carabao Cup final, I believe. This fixture's now been moved to this week, so Villa will play Liverpool at I think it's 7:30 kickoff tonight. So
You're right.
um,
Start.
I think Arnie Slot came out before the game on comments about Marcus Rashford saying, "I hope he does really well for Villa, just not against us." And I think if there's ever a game for Marcus Rashford to want to grab maybe a goal, his first goal for Villa, from a Manchester United point of view, you'd hope it'd be this one.
And our beloved Robins play. You remind me. They play.
AFC filed at home on Saturday, and then we've got quite a tricky run of fixtures. I think we've got no game on the midweek next week, but then we've got Rochdale. on the Saturday after that.
And before we finish, it was very sad news from the world of football journalism during the week that Paddy Barclay, a renowned football journalist, died at the weekend at the age of 77. Now, Tom, as somebody who's studying sports journalism and I'm sure looks across it, was Paddy Barclay somebody that you read and looked up to at all?
He was mentioned a lot during off. Well, he was mentioned during our first year, my first year at university. His name was mentioned a lot as someone to look up to. I read a couple bits of his work. I can't say I was massively, aware of his sort of presence in the sporting world before going to university. But now you're there, you see what he's done. Obviously, the books that he's put out, the articles, the people he worked for, things like that. Obviously, you've got a lot of books out there from what I've seen of the Matt Busby ones, the Mourinho ones, the Ferguson ones, things like that. Now you're looking at his tenure at Sky Sports, working with the Telegraph. It's such an illustrious career, and it's definitely someone that if I was to give, I mean, I'm not in a place to give anyone advice, but to say if anyone who wanted to get into sort of any world of media, I think he's definitely someone you'd look up to.
Yeah, he was a class act, Paddy Barclay, and I always seemed to be very balanced but opinionated at the same time and wrote with real authority. And I was actually surprised he was 77 because he's been working right up to almost the end. So a real loss to the world of football journalism and the world of just football media as well. Right, that's it for us. We're going to be taking a few weeks off. So the Theatre of Dreams will be back in about 3 weeks' time. So until then, Tom, let's hope our beloved Reds manage to do something for a change.
Safe travels, Rod.